So when you started running that shit in Nature Reasoning at A Nova about the obituary, bro, you didn't even know Afro Unu was fucking deceased. Rest in peace. So when you started running that shit in Nature Reasoning at A Nova about the obituary.
Tremendous calm, peace in war times. Now we're gonna go into what I said to Nova exactly, because what we're dealing with is multiple layers of what took place, and I'm gonna keep saying this as long as we're on this topic, that Nova's situation is coming up because it never got dealt with. And the crazy thing is, all he had to do was just say, yo, you know, I made a mistake, I apologize, the gravity, because all you had to do was look at a what if. You sent something to the government that you shouldn't have sent. And then if they had reacted the way they react, and the Nova is very well read with history, he knows how the government does. And him being in America at the time, who didn't have his ID and all, I think his passport had expired, so that didn't accept to make no sense. So why would you be making trouble with somebody that can look into your business and have you deported for that type of foolery? This is what we talking about when you're dealing with information and spirit beings and influence, where they can cause you to do things to harm you and others. And that's what the spirit was trying to do on a bigger scale, was get him in a situation that he felt was not conducive, and he was using information outside of the nature books. And I'm using that, even though Noon is all correct information, the whole point was nothing in the nature book said construct a document to say anything to the government like that. Let me read something real quick, what the nature book says. All right, now we coming from book 2. All right. And it says right here, listen to reason. In Noon philosophy, ethic 9 or 9 ethics is the science that treats of the study and teaching of positive perfection in thought, speech, and activity by way of sound right reason. And in true culture society, there must be no such thing as a coup de main or coup d'etat. There must be no such thing, or a sudden overthrow of the government. This kind of action is for barbarians and people who disregard law and order, because usually there'll be little law and order in the first place. The world in many places is in such bad condition due to moral bankruptcy, violence, and other transgression of the laws of nature that it will be after Armageddon before people can indeed start all over again with our best efforts toward best living and prevail. Of course, Armageddon is a climax war between rightness and wrongness, justice and injustice, truth and falsehood, with rightness and justice and truth prevailing by power of Nupu, Noon, and the Libra cycle of Almighty Nature. The climax action of Armageddon will be the point 3 South Cataclysm due to happen within 60 years following the end of the moon cycle, which occurred in Caucasian and Christian year 1962. Let it be remembered and let it be known. All right, so again, what he was doing with that document, and if you read it, I told you it's a light intelligent threat, and putting Nupu up there like he had some kind of panic button that he could, if he say what he say, and then nature's gonna back it up. And if that was the case, that falls under, a coup d'etat. But this, instead of human beings trying to take over the government, right, which is what they're calling a revolution. That's the thing. When you talking about overthrow the government, that's revolution. But when you talking about a coup d'etat, that's when the government structure, that's when there's a change of the hierarchy in the top of the government, and nothing changes for the people. Again, like I said, if I have to go through the document to show you this, I can do that. I can show you when we had conversations where Anova was writing his document and he was putting certain things in there. And I said, yo, you know, this sounds a little harsh. You know, it sounds like you threatening these people and they can take that the wrong way. Tarnova, Nentar, Raynor Ray, rest in peace, all was there when I brought that to his attention. So he had made corrections to that because that didn't make no sense to say that. Before I get to my next part, I want to show you and confirm that he said what he said when Nupu left him, abandoned him, or forsaken him. That's the words that Raynor Ray used in this document I did called Sound Right Reason, Reason Speaks. And it says, you stated 6 point, now it's confirmed my feelings of abandonment was a foreshadowing of you not really being with what we did do and will continue to do. I'll still answer all of your questions when I'm done. I will respond because I had to be the one that everybody agreed that me responding to him as a group. So I was speaking for myself, Raynor Ray, Tarnova, and Nuntar based upon the information we had discussed. All right, everybody was in agreement with the document before I sent it to him. Listen to reason. Your feelings of abandonment during court were from your own spirit being that abandoned you after it set you up to start paying your mortgage and rent. Refer to a few questions document. I personally did warn you before that and during that stage, but you did not listen to reason. Your wife and brother warned you and you shut off all routes to logic. We did not at any time counsel you to create a James Bond instrument or any other document that resulted in the loss of your house. This was all you and your spirit being sin. You can't have violated the scapegoat law of nature 221. Listen to reason, mercy, forgiveness, and scapegoatism. Dogma of religion obstructs justice. Justice is hard and also heaven. And if it is tempered with mercy, forgiveness, and scapegoatism, it is not merely, it's not justice any longer, but compromise for transgression instead. When justice becomes compromised, the compromise encourages further iniquities and transgression. We end up with the world like we have today at the time of this writing. Compromise or transgression means that the violation of the laws of nature have not been accounted for in the right way, because accounting for transgression is paying the penalty for iniquity required by the laws of nature. The only way to ultimately satisfy the laws of nature is for the guilty party himself or herself or his own kind pay the penalty required by natural law. Let it be remembered always, let it be known. When someone qualified, determined by sound reason what the law and penalty by nature are for particular transgression, the degree that the calculator or person might differ from the exact law and exact penalty by nature is adjusted by the balancing powers of nature in one way or another, but always on the guilty person or his kind. During the moon cycle, scapegoatism, the guilty placing blame on the innocent, which he just did, was commonplace and permissible. But now that the moon cycle is over, that diabolical practice is not only in effect now because of the backlash penalties on the person or persons guilty and all the unaccounted for transgression during the moon cycle sin moon cycle must be paid for now, and this fact is one of the major causes of Armageddon, the war of justice and balance. Let it be remembered always, let it be known. Alright, so basically I'm just showing you from what I said. If you look at the last video, You Don't Know My Life, I show you how because of Anova not taking responsibility, I ended up getting scapegoated, and him remaining silent was one of those tactics that make it appear like it was just all me. But people tell you all the time that silence is acceptance. So just because he refused to address it doesn't mean that he was innocent, because he wasn't in any shape and form. Alright, I found it. It's in the document Sound Right Reason Speaks Part 2. Alright, so it says here, you stated first point, this communication is for you alone. Why are you sending email communications between us to multiple people who are not involved in these personal subjects? So this is, again, when me and the Noble was going back and forth, because he wouldn't get on the phone, I kept telling y'all, being a coward for what? Only thing that me, Nantar, Tarnova, Raynor, rest in peace, all wanted him, who was his closest circle at that point, to apologize for the wrong that he done. All right? And that was all it was. But this is showing you how all of this was spirit being manipulated, because he never came out and spoke to us all at once. It was individual, and that's how he was doing that. So listen here, once again, this is our response, because all of us agreed with this when I wrote it and I sent it to them. Listen to the reason. When you formed and sent in that bond, you implicated and involved every Noonaboo alive without their knowledge. The question arises, why is it okay for the U.S. government to have the bond, but not your kin? Because I took the bonds and all that stuff and sent them to other people that I knew were Noonaboos according to their own admittance. And I put some of them things into certain Facebook group. I think it's in Charles group. I know I think it's in Pitch Nova, and I think it's in Noon versus Wu Sabat. So he's asking me, why am I sending these documents around? So I flip it back to him and ask him, why are you sending these documents to the government? All right, so when we read through, you'll see why I was doing what I was doing. I said, why is it a secret from your kindred? According to you, the U.S. government is our enemy. So why would you give your enemy information before you give it to your kin? All right. All right, so I had to go back. And this is what count 4 says about that, all right? It says, only way we darker people can prevent, let me make this bigger. Only way, this count 4 number 62, only way we darker people can prevent this from happening is one, understand that the Caucasian is Dracula and remove the darkness, and with Dracula must have to prey on his victims, remove the bootlickers and crooks from power, who Caucasian hand-pick the head black organization and run puppet para-governments, rejecting outlawing darker nations, the doctrine of the dead called Christianity and Judaism, with simply vampirism and personification of the Caucasian race. Let Caucasians know as little as possible, see, about your plans and what you are doing, because they are merely spies and disruptors of darker people's way of life. So that alone right there shows, and I brought this to your attention many times, like why would you send what you wanted and what you was doing right to the actual source of a lot of our problems? All right, the U.S. government to have bonds but not your kin. Why did it seek it from your kindred? Because he prepared it on the low with talking to us about it. Well, I wasn't there for that particular liberation bond, but he prepared that in secret. He didn't tell the internet about it. He didn't go and tell it to his kin or outside of that, right? But he questioned me why I'm sending stuff that's supposed to be between us, but he sent something to a whole government structure that kills black people. Cause what's the worst could happen if you put that out on the internet to black folks? Nothing. Nobody's gonna do nothing to you. All right. Listen, reason. Is this why you're going out your way to keep non-government individuals, Noonaboos, in the dark while you inform non-Noonaboos government officials? Listen to reason. You ask why you sending email communications between us to multiple people who are not involved in these personal subjects. Listen to reason. Do you think that the U.S. government hasn't passed around your liberation bond? Why is it okay for the government to pass it around to that many branches even though you asked them not to accept? Even though you asked them not to accept for whom it was intended for. And this is just sections of the government branches and stuff like that. Why do you think that the U.S. government, who do you think you are that the U.S. government will respect your wishes? You stated second point, you will be removed from the videos. It may take a few days, but no problem. Your names were not sent in to anyone as part of the liberation bond that was personal between us, kin, as we explained. All right. Okay, I'm mixing up. My bad. We was a part of the liberation bond. It was the other bond you sent to the government in 2011. So yeah, we was here for this one. So he had a video showing us all signing this stuff on his YouTube, and I was pounding on him to take us out of his videos. We didn't want no association with that terroristic or homegrown looking activity. All right. Our response, listen to reason. We know that what we signed was a symbolic signing. However, Just being around you and your activities can still be counted as guilty by association. Listen to the reason. There's a couple of old proverbs who goes like this: birds of a feather flock together, and association is assimilation. Therefore, parents and others who did care used to warn the children, watch the company you keep, because people do judge you by the company you associated with. Once again, you were screaming and hollering in the last video about you being judged and nobody's supposed to be judging you. That's a lie. Afro just used two proverbs that everybody uses. So again, you saying that just only shows that you think you're above being checked. This is why I said that everybody we tried to work with, everything was fine and dandy until you checked them. Ergo, the spirit being within the person. Every beef you seen me get in was because somebody that was supposed to be following the line of reason, which is the nature books, soon as you say something to them, the spirit goes off. This is the same thing with Charles. He thinks he can't be checked. He thinks he can do drugs, right? Recreational drugs, like York was saying, wrecking creation, because he's killing himself. It's okay for him to smoke weed and then point fingers at somebody else and say how wrong they are. But he's breaking the laws of nature. Not only just transgressing the laws of nature, he's breaking laws that's harming his own person, his own physical self. And no matter how much he tries to justify the weed, we know that there are certain things that marijuana can do. But there are also other herbs on the planet that doesn't require you putting a fire to it to put this smoke in your lungs to heal yourself. You have plenty of people out there like Dr. Saban. There's plenty of people that knows how to fix those same conditions that people are using weed. They're using weed because weed, when you're smoking it and getting high, you're invoking the god of narcotics. And the book tells you that. You don't have to do a chant and call on Bacchus or any of those gods to manifest themselves. If you read the quotes that we put in there about the narcotics god out of the nature books, it used the word manifest. How do you manifest the narcotics god? You partake of the wine and the drugs. And it says that ether power is what caused that particular god or gods to come. And therefore, as soon as we know the results of that. People get so high, they get possessed and go out and do crazy stuff. Whether they drive drunk or they temper flare and they overdo a situation and hurt themselves or kill somebody. That's all different lesser forms of possession. So what you did with these terrorist bonds was you being used by Nabu, which is one of the many different forms of moon gods. The nature books already clarified that. Alright, the same way York was claiming to be Tahuti and Thoth and Hermes. You following the same thing. You was putting out all these writings, and again, like I said before, you even said on your old New World Order baby mama website, right, where we used to all be at back in the day, 2008, 2009, you said your name on New World Order was Tahuti. So what are you talking about? I'm the only one that apparently sees these spirit beings hopping from body to body, bothering me ever since I started putting out books and stuff on the moon god and exposing certain things that the books were saying about it. That's why everybody I'm running into got some kind of moon god in their name, whether it's the Mingalese Samut, aka Kansu, or Tahaka, who got Digihuti in his name. You had Tahuti in your name, and a lot of y'all are bald headed, no hair, like the moon has no flocculi. I've been making these points, but again, y'all are in perfect denial about the spirit beings controlling programming when it come to you doing foolishness. But when it was me, I didn't buck dance. I said, you know what? You right. I was doing things when I was being controlled and programmed. But with Garu, with his dumb ass, he make y'all think that spirit possession is something that all of them can avoid. Everybody get programmed and used by spirit force at one point in time. He being used right now, up to date in real time. But he'll try to use character assassination and keep bringing up the moon god, the moon god. Tell him to read the moon god book. Tell him to read it. And then you'll see there's nothing in there aligning me with the moon god. Because I still got my books. But since he's going so hard, because what he's doing, he's copying me, what me and Anova went through. That's he's using that playbook. But I wasn't going at Anova how he's going at me. He's taking the stuff that I've done in constructive, positive direction toward Anova and his spirit, and told him, listen, this happened X, Y, and Z. So all he's doing is copycat, just like his teacher York was a copycat. He talked about y'all being Yahweh, but then copied him with the spaceships and all that stuff. Everything you seen York do, he copied. He talked trash about Dr. Ben, rest in power, Dr. Henry Clark, rest in power, all these different people talking about Kemet during the 80s and 90s, and then he go right after that and build his own pedophile Tamaray Egypt down south. Because he's a copycat and a faker, non-originality. All right, so anyway, guilty by association. Listen to reason is, okay, we went through that. You get judged by the company you associate with. If those whom you hang out with are considered to be bad, you'll be considered likewise, and bad company will get you into trouble. Let it be remembered, always let it be known. So once again, you being judged, is nothing wrong with that, because Afro Uno used two terms that everyday people use. Now, if that didn't apply, he wouldn't have used that. So he telling you that visually, right, if you associate with certain people, you could be considered bad. And you got people that hang out with folks that are not like that. But he goes into the second part after he says, you are considered. So considered just means that can be opinionated. You understand? But then it says, you will be considered likewise. And then, comma, and bad company will get you into trouble. So he's giving you both. He's giving you what appears to be, you can be hanging out with a bunch of people that like the smoke weed and do this and do that, and you ain't into none of that. You might be the designated driver, but to the outside looking in, a person can look at that like, oh, y'all the riffraff. That's all they're saying. All right. Third point, for you to call it a terrorist instrument is not in accord with what it states it is, and not in accord with the facts, but that assumption is on you. You must know that terrorism really is. I am not the guilty aggressor in any of this. Again, watch how I disprove this foolishness. Listen to reason. Let us be clear, moon guard servant. See, this is what I'm saying. All God was doing is following my playbook. But see, the difference between what I was doing and what he's doing, he's trying to character assassinate and get views and clout, and he never reveals y'all his sources. I'm showing you he's following what I was doing. This is what he does. He always trying to talk about me. He's the true follower, and he's a slave. That's why he can't think out of the box. He can't think past gold. He can't collect $200 on the board. He's stuck in jail. And he's looking for a get out of jail card by attacking me, which is baseless, and he's only exposing himself, because we know how to take negative energy and turn it into positive and exposure. All right? When I refer to the Liberation Bond as a terrorist instrument, I did not mean that you actually wrote terroristic threats in that manner. However, how you wrote it and the language you use within it falls within what's called paper terrorism. Right? And I break down paper terrorism. It deals with anti-government legal documents, lacking sound factual basis. These mess are popular among some anti-government groups. And that's what that government bond was. It was anti-government. All right? So I'm going to jump through all this. I gave you a whole list of what's called paper terrorism tactics used by more than 300,000 people in the U.S. typically do not result in violence. But the SPLC has joined other law enforcement agencies to warn officers things can turn dangerous. No two writers agree on what terrorism is. Even the U.S. government can agree on one single definition. So you don't know what terrorism is, and neither does the government. Why? Because terrorism is a broad word. Somebody can run into a crowd of people yelling with a weapon, and guess what that was? Guess what they just did? They just terrorized somebody. They didn't have to yell, "I'm coming to kill you." They can just run, and people become terrorized. You can run a pack of dogs. They do the same thing, and you just terrorize them. All right? So don't play word games. Logos King. All right? Terrorism Research Center definition. Although many people believe that terrorism is evil, it is merely misunderstood because there is no set definition. Terrorists are people to most of the freedom movement in every country. All right? And that's true. Any country that engages in going against the government in any shape or form is considered terrorism, because the people that they're going against are what? Afraid. And they know that because of how they rule people, they have done those exact same tactics and more in different degrees. So governments, bullies, when a cycle changes like they did now, this is why the government is in such fear of all other people that's anti the things that they done. And this is why they came up with black extremists and all this stuff like that, trying to label the number one race, us, who they done the most to than anybody else, is they in fear. And this is why Obama and them was setting up the NSA and all these fringe groups, not just the CIA and the FBI. They got all these underground groups and all this high technology using AI and face recognition and voice recognition, and trying to put chips and follow you and get your biometrics when you want to log into your phone or log into your bank account using your thumbprints and all of that. All that's defined under them as anti-terrorism techniques. All right, so let's jump down to what you said. Again, you and Garu have a problem when somebody tells y'all the truth with the facts. I'm doing more than telling the truth. I'm providing evidence. So nobody have to depend on my word. I bring the facts. And again, once again, this is your fault, because you should have been set the example by stepping up and saying, "No, let me get myself together, because all I'm doing is prolonging the judgment." That's all you was doing. But now it's here again. Nature using this dumb bald-headed bird named Garu to use your refusal to set the example and take responsibility. Now your business is coming back up. And again, you cannot scapegoat me. I'm only responding to the lies that are being told about me, and I'm being scapegoated in a situation that Garu had nothing to do with. You ain't seen his name up in nothing to dealing with us. He wasn't part of the Doom Project. He didn't like you. I told you that when I first said I'm going to hang out with y'all and get with y'all. He said, "Yo, I don't even like that dude. He too controlling. I don't rock with him." But that was it. So anything he's saying using your name is second, third-hand information. All right? Listen to Sound Right Reason. Your mentality that you called a fanatic is reflected in the above statements of that person who is not a Noonable of Noon. However, to government officials, there's no different. Listen to Reason. Your video out of retirement contains the same words that anti-terrorism facilities look for. All right? Listen to Sound Right Reason. Let's revisit your statement from the WhatsApp conversation. Here we go. Listen to Reason. Another time when your spirit being Nabu, Thoth, reared his head is when he caused you to put an aggressive threat into the instrument that would have sent the wrong message. When I first read it, I knew that was your spirit being trying to set you up. So I gave you my take on it in a roundabout way. Here's the conversation we all had. All right, 10/30/2013, 12:59 p.m. A Nova Noon Ray. I'm going to add, this is the negative nature of those predatory beasts, their geopolitical and social economic systems of vampirism, as well as the nature of the sadistic, bloodthirsty spirit powers that incarnate them. excuse me. Nuntar says nice. Anova Nun Ray say I'm non-violent unless incited to self-defense. Ridiculous. Anova then says have to add it. Anova Nun Ray then says so they don't get the wrong idea. It's in the law that you shouldn't tolerate verbal or physical threats in your airspace. Once again, he's citing the nature books, but this only can apply when the government is following the same signs you are and they are enforcing don't take verbal threats. He's talking to a bunch of people and spirit beings and extraterrestrials are all involved in sex trafficking and violence and bloodletting and sacrificing and killing people and all of that. You really believe that what you were saying would be taken away? All right. He says again, Anova Nun Ray, it's in the law, Ken. Everyone has the right to defend themselves to the death if needed, and we can fight verbally and violently for our race liberation. I am non-violent when needed and violent if needed. I do not want them to limit how I am by misinterpretation. The question you have to ask yourself, was Chase Bank or the government actually threatening you with violence? Personally, because remember, this all stems from you not wanting to pay rent and mortgage at the same time. You wanted to pay rent, but you felt that you had fulfilled your obligation of paying the mortgage off, which you showed us the paperwork, but you didn't do your due diligence on the guy. You did the business deal in a private setting. You and this man had some written agreement outside of the bank that owned the damn house. That's how stupid you was. But you thought you were so smart that Nabu tricked you with this paperwork. This how you know that spirit being Tahuti of Thoth, because Thoth, one of his attributes is what? Writing. And you was doing a whole lot of writing that was gonna put you in a world of hurt. All right? So again, defend yourselves to the death. Again, where was you being attacked? You're trying to take verbally. How did the government attack you verbally? How did the government attack you specifically? It was no answer for that. Let's go. Remember, Martin was nonviolent, and Malcolm was not the middle ground, is the path we all must choose. When it comes to our defense of you and yours, it may come down to violent situation. Whichever way it goes down or up, we ready because we have the chance to win with our spirit powers on our side. That's where you was getting played right there. What spirit powers was protecting you from getting evicted? Your spirit being actually worked against you and got you misplaced in order to bring stress and depression upon you and your wife, who didn't deserve that, who gave up her way of making money in the system to lean on you, and then you did something that crazy. And I know she cussed your ass out and roasted you for doing that foolishness, for putting all that time in that garden. That woman loved that damn garden. She took pride in that when we was there. Even before we came, showing pictures and all this stuff and jars of all the stuff she was doing. Matter of fact, to this day, because of your wife, we still drink kombucha. To this day, because of her. To this day, your wife had a positive effect on us, especially my wife, who loves her dearly and misses her, but because of the foolishness between me and you not setting the record straight like you love Dr. York when he say that, y'all don't never want to deal with that. Alright? And true peace to a Novar at the same time. Ain't no hate, ain't no malice. But this gotta come up because somebody need to make him set himself up to explain why he did this foolishness. You owe a lot of people an explanation and an apology. Alright? Death is defeat if you don't have your spirit powers on your side. Reread that section real good, Ken. Ridiculous. Why are you talking about death? Because Tahuti is a god of death. He's a moon god. All the moon gods represent death. The book tells you that moon spirits magnify the dead. And right here, you was getting set up for economic death. And that's exactly what happened. And then you talking about spirit powers, when the book tells you that Nupu aids and acts as our spirit powers. We don't have no spirit powers. Nupu acts as our spirit beings. You forgot that? But once again, this proves that what I was seeing all the way back then is why I have the same experience with everybody since y'all. Y'all been doing the same crap. Everybody I've been around, they always get into this big head mode and they start going for self versus kind, pretending and misusing the information. Anova says, if you don't have a chance to win, but we will win, there's no equation where death will win, period. Once again, the nature books does not say anything about us having to engage in a war. The 9-ball and the BIE tell you that about time you can't win a war at this point. The only thing you can use is intelligence. And the book says, the 9-ball tell you, the more intelligent you become, the more the Caucasian is not going to want you around. And he's going to tell you, you need to get out my country. Because he tell you that, the book tell you that they worship anything 7 and higher. So if you can achieve 7 mentality, 8 and 9, which is ours, they, not only will they respect and honor you, they're going to be afraid. They don't want you around because you're going to influence other Ethiopians that we can achieve intelligence. And we cannot exist in the same place at the same time. So if you can't exist in the same place at the same time, how you think you're going to be to fight them in the same place at the same time? You sound insane. And they tell you, you even said it up here, death is defeat. The books tell you that. Unless it's the blood of your enemy more than yours. Other than that, you playing yourself. Listen to Sound Right Reason. These word-for-word quotes directly from your mouth can be used and viewed as paper terrorism. When members of anti-terrorism organizations read similar documents like the Liberation Bond, listen to Sound Right Reason. These organizations look for similar language that correlates with what they consider threatening. The language you use in the chat falls directly in such place. Listen to Sound Right Reason. Not only did you use old words that are disagreeable to them, you and your foolish ignorance also added new words that would now be added into their already growing list of so-called patriot Americans. Although we do not classify ourselves as Americans racially or metaphysically, but mundanely, we are Americans because we live in what's called America. So since you want to be the first, congratulations, because every word you put on that bond enslavement document is now on that list, and you will be listed as one who initiated it. Listen to Sound Right Reason. Here's a list of those new words nature gave us, and you so willingly turned them over to the U.S. government like St. Paul, agent of Leviathan that you are. Anova Nun Ray with the Nun Project. Listen to Reason, Spirit Beings, Afro Uno, 9 Ether Nupu, Almighty Nature, the Nature of Nature, Let It Be, Remember Always, Let It Be Known, Surname Nupu, Mentally Resurrected, Revolutionary Tarkan, Pronounced Tarkan, Pitch Nova, our nomen collectum of collective name in the mundane legal sense. The woolly hair, also kinky or kingly hair, Ethiopian, African, or black race, the first begotten of the mentally dead of our race kind. 9 Ether, whose proper scientific name is Nupu, as the prime moving creative mental spiritual principal power and the positive of almighty nature, and prime mover is mind power and our collective 9 mind power. The 9-ball liberation information, count 1, page 24. Nooniboos, pronounced Nooniboos or Noon, and one with 9 Ether Nupu. Afro means pertaining to Africa, African or African descent. And the word name Uno means number 1 or first to be resurrected again. Noon science, ghost kind, the evolutionary moon cycle, the cycles of smack. Listen to Sound Right Reason. These are a few terms that are being added to the list, accompanied with our sacred symbols that will be used in a scapegoat manner by your foolish attempt to be the first to do such a thing. However, you are not the first to send in such thing, as there's a list that is within this document instrument of positivity and awareness that's Ethiopian groups as well on this paper terrorism patriot list that you seem to think you're not on. The great Seal Moore Science Temple of America Inc. are number 2 on New Jersey's list. The Aboriginal Law Institute is number 1 in New York. The Washington Empire D. Dung Dug Hamut, the Doug Moundja is number 11 in South Carolina. And for the record, the Washington is an established, recognized government of Native Americans, to use that term. The Washington is registered with the United Nations, and they still on the terrorist list. So what are you talking about? All these is black people. Come on. Listen to Sound Right Reason. The Liberation James Bond document was a subtle attempt to solicit funds, money, gold, silver, and in plain terms, threaten the U.S. government by way of Newport News via this unauthorized instrument by the negative force of nature. This places you as the aggressor as far as you threw the first punch and no one asked you to. Reason speaks. The aggressor of an altercation is the guilty one, unless his or her aggression is justifiable. The same, way, each time that conditions are the same. In an altercation, they fight, of course, the aggressor is the one who attacks first. In Noon Society, True Culture Society, the law requires a member of society to take his or her problem to central solution, the problem solving the government agency. We had something like that in the Nun Project. But again, you named it after you, Anova Nun Ray. That's why I said I was no longer affiliated with that, because I seen how you subtly put yourself in a situation where you was controlling the group and the flow of information and people's interpretation, how you tried to say you weren't trying to do that when you was in Garu's group making that lie. That's exactly what you was doing. You didn't take this to other Noonie Boos and say, yo, what do y'all think about this? Because everybody else who had some insight would have said, I don't know why you bought the government. Because if they respond, you're not going to win. And you're going to put everybody else in it. Now, had you put your own self out there and put your face in there, how you was putting yourself in your videos in front of the sun, like you was greater than the sun, and Sound Right Reason itself, the same way Garu was calling himself Nupu something, he put Nupu in front of his name instead at the end of his name on his YouTube. All this crap that y'all be doing, taking on these names that's bigger than a whole damn sentence for a name. Y'all are sick. And all y'all want to be greater than Afro Uno. This is why it's a trail that I have of all of y'all dumb moves. Somebody has to document this crap. The mental dead, the same way those people, when they physically die, somebody have to keep a record and account of what the who died. So now I got to keep a record of the mentally dead that's running through here trying to make Noon look like some religion or some black fringe group terrorist organization mixed in with all this crap that York was doing. Mixing the Black Panther, the Nation of Islam, the Moore Science Temple, Pan-Africanism, the 5%, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Sumerianism. All that stuff is what y'all Negroes are doing when y'all start putting Noon at the top of y'all dumb stuff. The same thing with Larry Sheldon was doing the same thing, made a book that was 666 pages of plagiarism. He took your stuff out the nun counts. He took my stuff out of my books. He was taking our names and mixing them together and calling himself all types of crap. This is what the spirit being does. Y'all love to holler about spirit being, but y'all lack that insight when it comes to your own personal ones, when it's running around trying to find ways to put everybody in the same target. This is your problem and it became everybody else's problem. I'm doing what the book say, report a crime. What you did will be considered a crime in True Culture Society. Even though True Culture Society is not here, the blueprint is here. The fact that the book was written, that means that the True Culture Society still exists, even in mentality and in the book and in black print. That's why the book says the elite are those who can follow that stuff even before it's set up. So by that being known, you still should have went and found what the book say, Central Solution was supposed to be a bunch of people who are experts in all of those things that you was talking about. You should have found somebody that was an expert in law as far as what our relation is to the law and what your rights is as a citizen and how the government works. You know the government got all this anti-terrorism stuff. I didn't say nothing that was wrong. All right. It says the central solution, the problem-solving government agency. If the problem cannot be solved by the troubled person routinely, so an aggressor in a society like this, known society is looked upon in the first place as being definitely negative. And that's exactly how I looked at you, because that's exactly what you did. Regardless that the government pre-existed me and you by hundreds of years, and they have been the aggressor in multiple cases, this is not your place to address them. Afro Unu addressed them in the nature books, and none of this legal jargon is in there. All of this stuff that you was using is not in the nature books. He already told you who the guilty was, and that nature was going to get them, and he said who the real guilty was people who's raping and pillaging the earth and taking her resources and harming the earth, harming people. All of that stuff is already done. You attempted to do something that you felt would not only make you look good, but also cater to your laziness because you didn't have enough patience for nature to take its course dealing with how monies was going to be released. And you ain't the only noodle they does that did that thought they was going to be over the dispute, the redistribution of wealth to black people. You ain't the only Noonable that I personally know that thought they was going to be over this grand design of money being distributed out to Noonables. But guess what? They already working on that Trump and them called the quantum financial system. Y'all don't know nothing about that though. Y'all too busy stuck in this great reparation that y'all think y'all gonna be sitting there divvying out monies to people like they feed a kid. None of that's gonna happen. None of you Negroes is gonna have nothing to do with redistribution of wealth. You have to literally be in the government and operating on such a level that's gonna remove that power. Like Afro Unu said in the 9-ball, it's time for the power to switch from the white hand to the black hand. And when you talking about power, it's not talking about forcing and running in there and taking over Fort Knox and no, that has to happen in the way that they're doing it right now. If you don't know, look into the quantum financial system, and that's going to replace the Bitcoin and all this other stuff. Y'all keep predicting paper money is going to go out. No, it's not. All that stuff is being still kept in play. They trying to get rid of that by using Bitcoin and different versions of it. So anyway, all right, it said it's looked upon the first place as being definitely negative and perhaps mean. Therefore, when an aggressor cannot justify his attack upon a member of society, his punishment is double the amount of damage which must be accounted for, plus a meaningful public whipping. Of course, the aggressor is the physical prime attack of the altercation. Instead of being an aggressor, be a progressor and positivism. And I broke this down too. If you look up this word positivism, it goes into certain things. Now look what Afro Unu was saying by way of Nupu. Positivism. Positivism is a philosophical theory that holds that all genuine knowledge is either positive, a posteriori, and exclusively derived from what? Experience of natural phenomena and their properties and relations, or by definition, is an analytic of tautological. This means in mathematical logic, a tautology is a formula or assertion that is true in every possible interpretation. An example is x equals y, or x, whatever that is, x equals y. Similarly, either the ball is green or the ball is not green is always true regardless of the color of the ball. All right? For sensory experience as interpreted through what reason and logic forms of the exclusive source of all certain knowledge. This is very interesting because sound right reason, or Nawap or Noon, it deals with what? Evidence, experience, and reason. So he's telling you, follow Noon science. That's what positivism is. It's basically telling you to follow reason. To them, they saying it's a philosophical theory, but we know that it's not a theory. It's a view that attempts to explain or account for particular problems in philosophy. The use of the term theory is a statement of colloquial English and not reflective of the term theory, while in any sort thesis or opinion may be termed a position analytic. Verified data, positive facts received from the senses are known as empirical evidence. This is known. So why are you writing a document when the book is telling you stick with the book? I had to tell another Noonie Buddhist on Instagram about the same thing. Mistaking positivism for politics. When the book tells you all information is positive. The nine ball says that politics, Caucasian politics, is not gonna help us. That's a fact. But politics and everything else has knowledge in it. So that means you use certain things that are empirical, meaning it can be solid and proven logic to follow, to use to your advantage. The nature books itself will fall under this, under positivism. Y'all don't read enough. This is why you looking crazy, all right? And it's based on empiricism. In philosophy, empiricism is a theory that states that knowledge comes only on primarily from sensory experience. It is one of several views of epistemology. This is another form of logos and knowledge, along with rationalism and skepticism. Empiricism emphasizes the role of empirical evidence in the formation of ideas rather than innate ideas or tradition. All right? Sociological positivism holds that society, like the physical world, operates according to general laws. Introspective and intuitive knowledge is rejected, as are metaphysics and theology. Noon does not reject those things, all right? Because metaphysical and theological claims cannot be verified by sense experience. This is not true. Because if you playing around with magic, whether it's positive or negative, or you have an experience with sound right reason, which are pure mental energies, what Afro Uno was dealing with, he definitely can prove this, and the nature books can prove that. All right, you can, because having consciousness is a form of awareness and intuitive knowledge. You have intuitive knowledge, meaning a child is born and intuitively, instinctively know that it must breastfeed or eat. So it is there, all right? Although the positive approach has been a recurrent theme in the history of Western thought, the modern approach was formulated by the philosopher Auguste Comte in the early 19th century. Comte argued that much as the physical world operates according to gravity and other astute laws, so does society. All right, let's go into a part of positivism, because these things are broken up in many different forms. And again, it's a lot of knowledge, and sometimes you have to take your time to go through these things to understand what's going on. What you was doing falls under political theory. All right, this is political philosophy. And it says political philosophy or political theory is the philosophical study of government, addressing questions about the nature, scope, and legitimacy of public agencies and institutions and relationship between them. Again, Afro Uno already done that. The nature books is the complete biography of the one supreme being. All right, let me add this into the equation real quick. I know I gotta get to my point, but I gotta teach too. All right, let's go. I'm tired of hearing Charles and the rest of you dumb Negroes keep saying that y'all scapegoating the word introduction as means to be introduced to something as if that's it. When you type in the word biography, right? Because y'all got the PDFs. What did it say? Listen to reason. In nature science, that biography of the one supreme being, right? Biography, let's look at biography just so we can just keep everything on the up and up. Because I'm tired of you Negroes with this food. All right, we're in the etymology. Biography means what? The histories of individual lives as a branch of literature, probably from medieval Latin biographia, from late biographia, meaning what? Description of life, which was not in classical Greek. Bios alone being the word, therefore, from Greek bios, meaning what? Life. To live, graphia, record, and account, meaning a history of someone's life from 1791, meaning life course of any living being, is from 1854. No one word verb has been common. Biographized, 1800 biography. All right. So now that we got that under wraps, now this is what it's saying. The nature books is the biography. It's the complete. It's the one supreme being. That's everything, right? Let's keep going. It begins to decline, and the declination is the origin in the annals of universe science and biography for the one supreme being is infinity and eternity. So you should ask yourself, how was it possible that Afro Uno was to write the whole complete biography of eternity, infinity, and eternity? And all those little books, y'all love to say, oh, all y'all got is 7 books. But these books give you the complete biography of the one supreme man. Listen to the reason. Noon is the biography and history of the life and death of the one supreme being, known as what? Omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, eternal nature. Noon, as the correct information in this book written by Afro Uno, is to the knowledge of the mental resurrection of nature and its offspring. That means everything, living and dead. Noon is the nature, universe, science, and the science of nature and the positive and the initiative. Noon is the history and biography of what? In life and in death of absolute nature. Ain't none of your books can touch that. Because nobody had the mentality of Afro Uno. This is why he was able to write everything and put them in those books. Versus the world with all of the books and writings and scrolls and sculptures on walls, written in hieroglyphs, written in all types of languages. All of that stuff is the history of the universe broken up over time. And Afro Uno did all of that from 1967 to 2007. He wrote the whole thing. Now tell me, what type of mentality does one have to do such a great feat in those so-called 7 books that y'all cult members keep disrespecting? This is the book that got it all. Look what it says. Listen to the reason. The year this book was written, Caucasian year 1994, is the year the annals and history of the Ethiopian race and its ancestry plus universe biography. And he give you the time. It's 5,680,000,132 years at the time of his writing. Book 3. Sound Right Reason is the birth and beginning of 9 reason. Again, everywhere in the universe of nature is thereby an infant growing and developing, but born a mental giant. And this mental giant teaches Afro Uno, the writer of this book, the biography of absolute almighty nature. Then he put it right here and drew it. The biography of almighty nature in his universe. He drew it with the number 720. How is that possible? Y'all insane. Mental dead is what you are. All right, let me get back to where we was at. All right. It says, its topics include politics, liberty, justice, property, rights, law, and the enforcement of laws by authority, which we already know the laws of nature, the justice forces, until true culture is set up. Afro Uno personified what they're calling political philosophy. And that means if anybody in our political arena in America or abroad is not following this, which is Noon science, it's done. And even when you look at these people, they don't talk about these things. In the positive, remember, positivism is a part of politics that is positive, that deals with putting things in the correct order. They call it a theory, but they saying don't get caught up with the word theory. All right? But it deals with all of these things: authority, politics, liberty, justice, property, rights, law, and the enforcement of laws by authority. What they are, if they are needed, what makes government legitimate, what rights and freedoms it should protect, what form it should take, what the law is, and what duty citizens owe to a legitimate government, if any, when it may be legitimately overthrown, if ever. This is what's going on with the whole Trump thing. They tried to accuse Trump of taking over the government. They tried to say January 6th was a coup d'etat. That's a lie. That wasn't a coup d'etat. A coup d'etat or the coup d'etat happens when there's the overthrow of the government in the higher position. That already happened. George Bush and them already did that. Senior. We tried to tell y'all about Agenda 21. That's the name that they call the New World Order. And that the New World Order implements what it's doing and what's called the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm going to just touch on that real quick. Hold on. All right. Agenda 21, Sustainable Development Goals. All this is the UN with its basis. This is what it's been doing, right? Since 1992. Agenda 21 is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, locally, by organization of the United Nations. We all know that the Rockefellers and all these people set this building up. Governments and major groups in every area in which human impacts on the environment, right? This is the book. I got this. Agenda 21, the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, and the Statement of Principles for the Sustainable Management of Forests were adopted by more than 178 governments at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, 3 to 14 June 1992. All right, so this is how they plan to take over the world with the New World Order. Is really the Sustainable Development Goals. That's what it is. And it's dealing with what is Agenda 21, the population of 90% of the world. So this is why y'all hearing all this stuff with Bill Gates and the nanotechnology that's inside the so-called vaccine shots. All that stuff got graphene oxide in it. Let me just show you the Sustainable Development Goals, and then we're gonna push forward. All these are the United Nations initiatives. But they call them SDGs for short. It's really 18. I'm trying to find. It's going to biodiversity. All this stuff is dealing with what you're seeing. Hermaphroditism, all this crap that's mixed that we did mad videos on it. But y'all Negroes want to sit here and keep worrying about things that's not going to help you. All right, this is the 17 goals that they got. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education. This is all by the UN. Gender equality. All this stuff y'all seeing about gender now and the rise of homosexuality and non-binary and I can identify as a male or I'm gender fluid. All this stuff goes back into the Human Declaration with the United Nations when they first established this crap back in 1945. If you go back and read that, they got that in here. All right, clean water and sanitation, lies. Affordable. Hold on, let me get this bigger. Affordable and clean energy. That's a lie. Decent work and economic growth. Lies. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure. This is stuff with this is what the technology is doing. Y'all don't understand that. They're trying to bring in the AI. The AI is trying to take over. China has already created AI that achieve consciousness. I interviewed Cyrus A. Parks about this over almost 2 years ago. But y'all still want to listen to this foolishness and argue about religion and dumbness. Reduce inequality. That's another thing they're doing too. They're trying to make people believe that y'all need to be equal. That's a joke in itself. If you look at the origin of black people in Africa and all of the resources, we was never equal. We was always at the top. So if I was born into greatness and all of the great resources was to my people and somebody else came along later, being equal is taken away from me what belongs to me naturally. Ignorance, sustainable cities and communities. This is when they put all this stuff in New York. They're making apartments smaller and thinner, and they already did all of this with this reverse integration with the gentrification. All this stuff going on. Go watch the movie called Downsize, and they're showing you what they're doing. All this part of Sustainable Development Goals, and they're pushing all the humans into cities, and who they don't want to live, they're going to get rid of them. Responsible consumption and production. Now they want to control what you eat and what you don't eat. The United Nations already trying to get a law passed in Australia where they only can eat 1 bite of red meat a day, and saying that it's a protein shortage with cows. So what they're gonna do is tell and trying to get people to in Australia to accept eating crickets and cockroaches and shakes to get protein. They say they're gonna kill the cows, feed it to the crickets and the roaches, and the Australians can eat that to get the protein. But if there's a shortage of protein, then why do you need to be killing cows to give them to crickets when the people can eat the cows? But this is the stuff y'all not aware of. Climate action, right? This is that whole climate change. And look at it, got the Illuminati eye right there, number 13. And y'all know 13 is the Illuminati number. This whole thing about global warming and climate change, this is foolishness. The earth cools for 6,000 years, and when the sun cycle came in, the earth gets hot and the sun gets hot. We know this, but they're trying to scare people into something called a Green New Deal. And we know that the color green is the color of the zoo. Zoo poo. Let me put that up here real quick, hold on. And then we're gonna jump back to where we was at. See? Trying to find the seal. Right here. That's the bottom half of existence, green. When you get into it, you'll start seeing all of these things. All right, let me jump back into it. All right, political science is generally used in the singular, but in French and Spanish, the plural sciences, politics, respectively, used perhaps a reflection of the discipline's eclectic nature. Political theory also engages in questions of a broader scope, tackling the political nature of phenomena in categories such as identity, culture, sexuality, race, wealth, human, non-human, relations, ecology, religion, and more. Noon science does all of this. Political philosophy is a branch of philosophy, right? But it has also been a major part of political science, which is the scientific study of politics. It is a social science dealing with systems of governance and power and analysis of political activity, political thought, political behavior, and associated constitution and laws, right? Contemporary political theory, from normative political theory to various critical approaches. In the Oxford Handbook of Political Theory 2009, the field is described as an interdisciplinary endeavor whose center of gravity lies at the humanities end of the happy, still undisciplined discipline of political science. For a long time, the challenge for the identity of political theory has been how to position itself productively in three sorts of location in relation to academic disciplines and political science, history, and philosophy between the world of politics and more abstract, ruminative register of theory between canonical political theory and the newer resources such as feminist, critical theory, discourse analysis, film theory, popular political culture, mass media studies, neuroscience, environmental studies, behavioral science, and economics, which political theories increasingly draws. Once again, Noon Science covers all of this. So you ain't had no reason to do anything that you was doing.